Hi. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi thriller movie called Subservience. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the suburbs, where a loving couple, Nick and Maggie, live with their two kids, Isla and Max. Nick is a family man who loves his wife deeply and works as a construction site manager. Their life is pretty happy, until one morning, when Maggie has a sudden heart attack. She is rushed to the hospital and the doctors are able to save her life. However, they suggest that she be admitted to the hospital for an immediate heart transplant. Now, Nick not only has to balance work and take care of the kids, but also pray that his wife finds a donor. One evening, he takes the kids to a presentation by a high-tech company, Cobol Industries. There they see the Sims, advanced robots that can help humans with their daily chores. Just don't put them in a pool without a ladder. While Nick is distracted looking at the robots, young Isla wanders around on her own. He freaks out when he notices this and begins searching for her. Thankfully, a Sim named Alice brings her back and even offers to watch over the kid. A salesman soon arrives at the spot, explaining that Alice is the latest model with their most sophisticated AI tech. This new technology allows the Sims to mimic human emotions. Nick, who is struggling to balance his work and family life, finds it intriguing and decides to buy the robot. With what money, you might ask? Well, I don't know. The next morning, Alice shows up to their door and immediately starts helping around with almost everything. She memorizes each member's schedules, absorbs the shopping list from the smart fridge, and even fixes the loose stairway railing. At the end of the day, the family comes back to a perfectly clean house and a warm dinner. The Sim quietly watches on as they eat their dinner and analyzes their behavior patterns. Later that night, Isla sneaks out of her room to the kitchen. She climbs on a chair to reach a jar of cookies that is kept on the top shelf. However, she loses her footing, drops the jar, and falls from the chair. Nick, who is working upstairs, hears the loud noise and immediately runs downstairs. He reaches the kitchen, only to see that the Sim has caught his daughter. Isla is unscathed in the accident, while the robot is surprisingly bleeding from her left leg. After putting his kids to bed, Nick goes to check on Alice. He finds her in the bathroom, stripped down to her lingerie. He awkwardly asks if she needs a repair, but Alice has already used a special bandage that instantly heals any damage. Sometime later, the family visits Maggie at the hospital. Through their conversation, it is evident that the kids are really fond of the Sim. Nick, in the meantime, gets intimate with his wife when they are alone. Turns out he has a lot of pent-up sexual frustration in the absence of his wife and in the presence of his surprisingly bangable robot. The next day at work, Nick and his coworkers notice their boss showing the workplace to a representative from a robotics company. A curious Nick later talks to his supervisor, only to get devastating news. The company is actually looking to make profits by laying off the human workers and replacing them with Sims. The supervisor says Nick will keep his job as the site manager, but he resigns on the spot in solidarity with his coworkers, momentarily forgetting that he has a wife in the hospital, children to take care of, and a robot that he'll be paying interest on for the rest of his life. However, when the supervisor reminds him that he needs money for the hospital bills, okay, good. Nick changes his mind and agrees to stay in the job. That night, after putting the kids in their bed, Alice joins Nick in the living room. He invites her to watch the movie Casablanca, but she knows the entire story from her database. Nick replies that actually watching it is a completely different experience. He then orders her to wipe all she knows about the movie from her memory. The Sim explains that he will need to restart her programming to do so. Thus, Nick holds down the power button on her neck for 7 seconds, as per her instruction manual. Following this, all data related to Casablanca is deleted from her system. Alice then sits down with Nick and experiences a movie for the first time. She interprets Casablanca, which is about a love so powerful that a person would even do bad things to protect it. At this moment, they are interrupted by a call from Maggie, who finally has some good news. She announces that the doctors have found a donor, so the surgery has been scheduled. However, the next day the doctor brings concerning news. There's a fierce storm in the area. This prevents the helicopter with the donor's heart from arriving at the hospital. The surgery will have to be cancelled yet again. That night, a disturbed Nick goes drinking with his work buddies to lay off some steam. The whole group is very frustrated because they're having trouble finding work. Everyone is bubbling with rage towards the Sims and want to take revenge. Just start a fire and remove the doors. Later, one of Nick's very close friends and ex-colleague Monty claims he left some tools behind at the construction site, so he asks the group to drive him there. Upon reaching, Monty finds the container container where the brand new sim workers are kept. It is locked and requires a password, which is given to the site's manager, Nick. He refuses to open it for them, but Monty guesses that the code is Isla's birth year. His guess turns out to be right, and the container opens to reveal a bunch of robotic workers that look all the same. Enraged at losing his job, Monty starts destroying the Sims with a nearby metallic rod. A horrified Nick tries to stop him, but the others hold him back. After the outburst, everyone returns home, and Nick immediately gets into the shower. Suddenly, Alice appears with towels, and he notices that she's wearing his wife's robe. The Sim explains that Maggie's smell seems to calm the kids, but Nick doesn't like the idea and asks her to take it off. She obliges right there and strips down to her lingerie. Nick gets nervous and tries to leave, but Alice stops him. She then removes his towel before making him sit down. While climbing on his lap, she blindfolds him and modifies her voice to sound like Maggie. "Nick, you've been out drinking with the boys again, haven't you? You need to take responsibility, Nick." This is enough for an already sexually pent-up Nick to lose himself. He gives in to the illusion and pretends that he's being intimate with his wife. Little does he know that Alice is packing a 9. The next morning, Nick wakes up with regret and tells Alice they can't do it again. She points at the data and says his stress is considerably reduced, but he still scolds her, explaining it's not about needs, but about connection and love. Things only get worse for him at work, as the cops have shown up to investigate the attack on the Sims. Nick claims that he was with his wife at the hospital last night. He adds that his code was Isla's birthday, so any close friend could have guessed it. However, the boss isn't convinced and threatens to fire him if he's lying. Right then, Nick gets a call from Maggie, who is excited because they've finally found another donor. This lightens up his mood, so he takes the day off and rushes to the hospital. Fortunately, the transplant is a success thanks to a team of surgeons including several Sims. In just a few days, Maggie is discharged from the hospital. Her body is still weak, and she has trouble bending over to pick up Max. So, Alice volunteers to look after the kid instead. In the next few days, the Sim starts showing more and more peculiar emotions. Thanks to the reset, watching Casablanca and observing the family, she has now developed complex emotions like jealousy. She is also ready to do anything to get Nick's affection and protect him. The next morning, Maggie jolts awake to the sound of Isla yelling, "Stop!" This prompts her to rush out of her bed, and she grabs the railing on her way downstairs. Unfortunately, the railing suddenly breaks, which leads to Maggie falling down and suffering some minor injuries. In the meantime, Alice stops tickling Isla, which is why the kid was yelling stop. When Nick comes home from work, he finds Alice reading to his daughter, using Maggie's voice. The Sim then mentions that Maggie had an accident due to the stairs railing coming apart, but this makes Nick suspicious, as Alice had fixed the railing on her first day at the home. Nonetheless, he arranges a romantic dinner just for him and Maggie that evening. As the two have fun, a jealous Alice is seen observing them from the window. After dinner, the couple takes a shower together and gets intimate in bed. Nick doesn't want to hurt Maggie, so instead of getting inside, he tries to pleasure her orally. But their special moment is creepily interrupted by Alice, who says that Isla had a nightmare and is asking for Nick. Once the kid is taken care of, Nick goes to the garden to clean up the mess from the dinner, which is a euphemism for returning to the oral stuff. At that moment, Monty appears in the garden with a few drinks. He is incredibly drunk and reveals that their boss is pressing charges for destruction of property. He blames Nick for snitching on him, and an argument ensues, which ends up in a full-blown fist fight. Eventually, Monty grabs a bottle to hurt his friend, but he's stopped by Alice. In a shocking twist, the Sim breaks the glass and sends the attacker flying. Humiliated and scared, Monty runs away, but not before threatening to drag Nick in the case. After the dust settles, Nick tells Alice that Sims aren't supposed to hurt people, but the latter bizarrely starts talking about their life together if Maggie dies. He immediately snaps at her, saying she'll never take his wife's place. That night, Alice visits Monty at his home without telling anyone. He is busy snorting drugs and contemplating ending his life. When Monty spots Alice, he immediately starts hurling insults at her and the Sims in general. She'll release a new game instead of all that DLC. Fueled by the drugs and anger, he then pulls out his gun to shoot her. However, she effortlessly stops him and throws him on the ground. The robot then brutally pushes him through a wall, grabs his gun, and fatally shoots him. The news of Monty's death reaches Nick the next day at work, and he's deeply unsettled. He's now starting to get suspicious of his Sim and her involvement in this incident. In the meantime, at home, Maggie is in the bath when she suddenly gets dizzy while trying to pick up a book. Alice arrives and helps her, but instead of leaving, she stands right there. Maggie awkwardly says she wants to take a bath in peace, but the Sim refuses to leave because she's worried Maggie may drown in case she suffers another attack. Alice then creepily explains that Maggie is putting stress on the whole family, especially since she can't meet Nick's physical needs. A stunned Maggie asks how she knows that, to which the sim replies that she knows what Nick's vitals are and when he's satisfied. I'll give you a hint, he likes pegging. Furious, Maggie sends her to stay in the garage and confronts her husband when he comes home. Nick admits he got physical with Alice once, which leads to an argument between the duo. Unbeknownst to them, Alice has now become more radical and is determined to eliminate any burden on her primary user, Nick. She soon hears Max crying upstairs and concludes that the little kid is a burden on his father. So she takes him to the bathroom, puts him in the tub, and starts filling it with water. Thankfully, Isla sees this and alerts her parents, who are enraged in an argument. They rush to the bathroom upstairs, but Alice is holding the door shut. Desperate, Nick starts hitting the door with a lamp. Good idea, Nick. While Maggie climbs out the window and reaches the bathroom through the roof. She tries grabbing the baby, but Alice pushes her against the wall. Fortunately, Nick finally breaks in and takes Max out of the tub. He then smacks Alice with the lamp pole to free his wife, but when he tries hitting her again, she blocks the attack. Realizing that the sim is getting out of control, Maggie quickly plugs the lamp to the socket. This electrocutes Alice, and she is rendered unconscious, while the house loses power. After a while, an ambulance comes to take Max to the hospital. Nick apologizes to his wife, but she wants some space and leaves with the kids. Meanwhile, a COBOL agent also arrives and takes Alice to their repair shop. There, two technicians open her head and remove her memory. They then connect it to a computer and notice her code has gaps everywhere. Suddenly, the screens start flashing and a message appears saying an upload is taking place. It is revealed that Alice is hacking into the system and taking over all the sims manufactured by the company. This frightens the technicians and they pull the memory, but it's too late. Alice is already in the system and dumps all her data into a nearby sim named Alice 2. The new sim immediately springs into action and brutally mashes the technicians' heads on the floor. She then revives her originator, who now has a nasty gash on her face. Now free, Alice tracks Nick to his favorite bar and reaches there. Once she finds him, she explains her duty is to make him happy and admits that she killed Monty. Nick tries to leave, but she forcefully holds him down. A desperate Nick then pretends to gently touch her head, but it turns out to be a ploy. He cleverly removes her memory, causing her to shut down for the time being. This gives Nick ample time to run away from there. Elsewhere, Alice 2 makes her way to the hospital where Maggie is with her kids. The first thing she does is take over all the robotic workers there. Alice 2 then enters a room and brutally chokes a nurse to death for her access key. Thankfully, Maggie notices this and sneaks out with her children. On her way out, she accidentally crawls over broken test tubes, which causes a cut on her palm, but she bravely endures this and makes it out with her kids, where loads of sim workers are frozen in place. Maggie then takes the keys to an ambulance from one such sim and puts her children in. Unfortunately, Alice 2 notices the drops of blood across the hospital lobby and scans them. She now knows it belongs to Maggie and immediately rushes outside. The powerful sim reaches the parking lot just in time and notices Maggie in an ambulance. She then rips off the door and throws Maggie on top of a car in a maniacal rant. She admits that she wishes Nick would love her like he loves his wife. Alice 2 then grabs her victim by the neck and mercilessly pokes her surgery scar. At this critical moment, Nick arrives, driving his car at blinding speed. Maggie uses this distraction to somehow get away, and Nick ends up crashing the sim into the wall. As the vehicle catches on fire, Maggie hurries to get her unconscious husband out. However, her troubles only get worse as Alice 2 pushes the car and emerges from the fire. She climbs on top of Maggie and starts choking her while removing a piece of metal that is stuck in her body. The sim is about to stab her with it, but Nick suddenly regains consciousness. Gathering all his strength, he hits Alice 2 with a car bumper, which had fallen off due to the crash. "Choke me now," he yells. Maggie then snatches the piece of metal and stabs the sim in the face. This finally shuts down Alice 2 for good. In the aftermath of this incident, everyone is admitted to a hospital for some treatment. Meanwhile, the sim company is investigating the repair shop and the codes that regulate the robots. Suddenly, the computer announces an upload, while another Alice model opens her eyes. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.